Hi everyone, it's Ryan Liberty, and in this video we're going to discuss what are toxic people.
Ooh, ah.
Okay, so I am super excited to get into what toxic people are because I'm very passionate about this, and you'll find out why. But before I get into it, I just want to say we may talk about an abusive topic here, so if that bothers you, if it triggers you, you don't have to watch, that's okay. Turn the video off, come back to it later if you feel like you're able to handle it later. Also, if we mention anything about emotional abuse in this video, I like to mention that we all do things that are a little bit emotionally abusive. It's when it becomes a pattern over time that we can call it emotional abuse. And also, if you come here, with the titles, like what are toxic people, you may find that you have a person that you consider a toxic person in your life, and it may be because they're doing abusive things to you. So if you need support, I urge you to get that. If you seek it, it is out there. There are counselors, there are therapists, there are support lines, there are support groups. So there's plenty out there available to you. You just need to work to get it. Sometimes you do have to kind of shout a little bit and work to get that help, but it is out there, and I definitely urge you to find that support if you're in an abusive situation. So that out of the way, I spent a lot of time researching into the phrase toxic people because I hate this phrase, and we're going to get into why, but I wanted to know, where did this come from? Who started this idea of toxic people? So I did research. I've got my notes right here as always, and we're going to get into what it is now. So it was a term that, as far as I can tell, was first used in 1969 in a book called In and Out of the Garbage Pail by Fritz Perls, who was a Gestalt therapist. And in the book, he mentions that a friend, I guess, of his, a colleague, Jerry A. Greenwald, who was also a Gestalt therapist, he described nourishing and toxic people. And I also saw a paper in, I think it was called Voices, Volume 8, very old, again from the 1960s or 70s back then, and he described nourishing and toxic groups, so like support groups basically. They had a different term for it back then, but it was basically like the toxic dynamics in a support group. But in this book, In and Out of the Garbage Pail, Fritz Perls talks about how there's nourishing people and there are toxic people. And the difference between them, basically what he had amounted to, was the way that they make you feel. So you'll be able to tell the difference between a toxic person and a nourishing person by talking with them and how do they make you feel. That's really all he elaborated on in the book. There's even like a little funny illustration of a toxic person with a t-shirt on with the letter T for toxic, and a nourishing person with a t-shirt on with the letter N for nourishing. So that's really all it amounts to, as far as I can tell. And then I guess it picked up a little bit. It seemed to gain popularity in the 80s, and here we are today where you see articles all over the internet about toxic people and how to protect yourself from toxic people and how to deal with them and all this kind of stuff. So I hate this word toxic. I hate this word so much. I hate it because I hate the word evil because we use this word to describe people, human beings. And if you know anything about my channel here, I'm all about humanizing mental health. And typically when we use the word toxic, we're talking about people who have mental health issues. And so I have a bunch of things that I want to say here. One of them is that when you label somebody as toxic, you're telling me, or you're telling yourself, or you're telling them that that person is wholly toxic, that their identity is toxic. When you say it that way, it's almost as if there's no way to change the way that they behave. There's no way to change who they are. That's just who they are. They're toxic, and we put them in this neat little bubble or this box, and we file it away, and then that person has to deal with the fact that they're toxic for the rest of their lives. That's kind of the way the connotation comes off. What I would much rather see is that we describe people's behaviors and not give them some kind of identity that they are bad, that they are evil, that they are toxic. Because when you give somebody an identity that way, they believe that they cannot change, which is absolutely false. Everybody can change. Everybody's personality can change. And you put them in a very stuck way of viewing themselves and their situation, and it doesn't really help anybody. All it kind of does is spread pain, and I don't want to see people in pain, and it's not even an accurate mental health representation. So you can see it all over my face. I'm just frustrated with this word. I think when we talk about toxic people, particularly nowadays, what we're really trying to describe are people with what are known as the cluster B personality disorders. So you've got histrionic personality disorder, borderline personality disorder, narcissistic personality disorder, and antisocial personality disorder. Now, the thing is, these are disordered individuals. They are not necessarily doing the things that they do because they are trying to harm you. It's just the way that their personality is organized. So when we call them toxic, again, you're cementing in this idea that this is who they are and they're never going to change. And I know that there are many people out there that feel when it comes to narcissism, narcissistic personality disorder, and antisocial personality disorders that they will never change, and that is not true. Everything that I have heard from researchers and everything that I have read indicates that there are changes that can be made. There are different ways to go about those changes, and there have been people who have actually recovered, to my knowledge, from narcissistic personality disorder, antisocial personality disorder. I'm not sure. If you know of a case where there has been people who have recovered from that, please send it to me, because I would love to hear that information. But I believe that those people also, people with antisocial personality disorder, can also change and can also have a more healthy personality and live in a more healthy, wholesome, healthy way for themselves. So I don't like this applying of this term of toxic people, especially when we're talking about personalities. Also, you know, I guess some people may be coming to this video because they want to know, well, but I have somebody that I think of as a toxic person in my life. Or maybe you understand what I'm saying and you're like, okay, they're not a toxic person, but they do have a lot of toxic behaviors. They do things that harm me, they abuse me, there's emotional abuse, there's gaslighting, there's lying, all these kinds of things. So what do I do? And the answer to that is very, very simple. You have boundaries and you use boundaries appropriately. I have a video on boundaries if you need to learn how to do that. It takes some practice for people who are not used to doing it, and it's just worth the investment in learning. You know, if it's difficult for you, then it's just worth it to learn how to have boundaries. It's just fundamental. And if you want to avoid these toxic dynamics, toxic relationships with people, boundaries are the way to go. That's what they're there for. So the last thing that I want to say about toxic people is I feel that sometimes when people use this label of toxic people, what's really going on is that we are using a defense mechanism called projective identification or projection. I would like to make a video on that one day. I'm not comfortable making it yet because I'm not familiar with the insides of it perfectly, and I really want to have it down before I make a video. But basically, it allows us to blame somebody else, look at their situation, call them toxic, write them off, and then not have to take any responsibility for our own part in things, and not have to look at our own behaviors. So I think, not all the time, of course, but very often we use this idea of, well, they're toxic, I'm not. It's a very black and white thinking, which is also known as splitting, which is another defense mechanism. I will get into the defense mechanisms eventually on this channel, but it's not good to be doing that because, again, it puts them in their own label, and it doesn't give us the ability to make any changes within ourselves and to see our own power and our own ability to do things. So that is how I feel about the term toxic people. I do not believe that we should be using this term. This is an outdated term, again, from 1969. It's not something that's been tested, or it's not even really something that's used in the psychology community, the research. I've never really, I guess it's said here and there, but nobody really believes in it as a thing. It's not really a thing. So I don't like the term. I wish that people would stop using it. I have vowed to myself to never use it and to be very mindful of when it seems like it's going to come out of my mouth. So how do you feel about the term toxic people? Maybe toxic relationships, just the word toxic in general. I'd love to hear what you have to say about it. Maybe you have a very different opinion, a different way of looking at it. that may change the way that I think about it. So I'd love to hear it. Leave it down below, and I thank you for taking the time to learn about toxic people and the origins of that phrase with me today. Hey, it's Ryan Liberty. If you liked that video, please give it a thumbs up, share with a friend, and leave any questions or comments down below because that would really help me out. If you're somebody who's gone through a traumatic event and you're feeling cut off from the people around you, I have a free course that will help with that, so please click to get it. And if you'd like to see the rest of my videos, please click subscribe. As always, I want to remind you that your life matters. Nobody can question your worth. However it is that you're feeling, whatever it is that you're going through, it's okay, and you are loved. Thanks again for watching.